So with the official release of the Infinite Dragon Ball History mode on both versions of the game at the same time, I wanted to go ahead and talk about some units that are going to be really successful on this stage and just different things to help you guys out overall if you do happen to be struggling, because there's a lot of rewards here that you're going to want to get. So make sure that you are playing this event and you're playing it in its entirety if you can, of course. So that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Hit that subscribe if you'd like to see more Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle content in your sub box, of course. And for today's video like over, we're going to say 1,000 likes is the goal if you find the information helpful. Obviously, on the subject, it's not going to be helpful for everybody, but I still wanted to go ahead and discuss the topic. So overall, though, in the comments, let me know what teams you guys ran, if you were able to beat it. Did you find it easy? Did you find it hard? How would you rate the difficulty on a scale of 1 to 10? On top of that, let me know if you found any sort of difficulty at all on any phase. Like, was not being able to do this or that, or being locked by Cell problematic for you in any instance, things of that nature. So overall, though, I personally, to answer my own question, found level 2 to be a little bit more difficult, but if you guys saw my stream, I was able to just pretty much power through it. Obviously, do keep in mind that there are going to be categories that just simply are able to run through this easily, and then also we always have to take into consideration the fact that even if you have a category, maybe you don't have the requisite dupes in a unit to where it makes it as easy for you, right, as it would for somebody else, and that's completely fair. But overall, though, yeah, towards the end of this one, it was a little bit problematic not being able to switch a bit. But again, I still found relative ease with this. But I used one of the better categories I would consider for this event, which was the Kamehameha team, I believe. No, Cell Saga team. So regardless, so there's a lot of good teams you can take, and we're going to talk about those, and we'll get to that in a minute. So overall, though, if you happen to be struggling with this event, one thing you would want to focus on is the stacking mechanics. So when it comes down to it, there are a lot of units in the game that can stack attack, defense, or both on their super attacks. And this is important because on events like this one, the Goku event, or whatever else, you're able to get to a point where your unit stacks pretty much all the way through the event. And they may start off with, say, 100k defense, and by the end of the event, they're at about 700k or something like that. And the higher your defense is, the less damage you take. So you're going to be in a really good position where you just simply don't take any damage, meaning that no matter how long it takes you to deal damage, you'll eventually pretty much be able to win. Do keep in mind that you can only take 2 different sets of items, so 4 items total, as opposed to bringing in your 4 sets. So overall, though, defense stacks go from 100%, 50%, 30%, and then 20% to both. So I can't really single out specific characters on this list because there's just so many units that do different types of stacks and things like that. But what I can say is try to stick to units that are on this page here right now that don't have the turn restriction. For example, there are other ones that have like turn restrictions or whatever. Let's look at SS4 Goku. I mean, both of them have it. It doesn't matter much. But he gets a 30% for 6 turn raise. That means that it caps out. It's not limitless. He has a max number he can reach, right? In the best case scenario. There are combinations of units like him and this Vegeta post-EZA, though I will say, who raises attack and defense or whatever. Let's just talk about the defense, but still gets defense here and defense here to where he still has a cap, but his defensive potential is so high that you can work with him, you can be good with him. But again, keep in mind the different types of units. So if you're not sure in particular, what I would say is if they have another defensive boost in their passive, or they have an incredibly high defensive stat, particularly by being an LR, then those types of turn-restricted raises will be good for you in the long run, right, overall. And also if they're not a, and this is funny, if they're not a free unit, because the free units only get plus 3,000 in their stats overall. So again, the potential is just worse. But again, if you focus on units that can just go indefinitely, you'll be a lot better off, right? So let's take a look at one of the best units you can take to that stage. Obviously, I know a lot of people will not have this card, but for the record, I just wanted to kind of quantify what we're talking about here. So he gets 100% attack and defense at the start of the turn, plus he gets an additional 10% defense and attack up to a maximum of 70% at the start of each turn. Yes, that is something you're going to want to really rely on there, but that's not all. Each of his supers, whether it's the 12 or the 18 key, does limitlessly raise his defense, so 30% up for 99 turns. You're just not going to take 99 turns, so it's limitless effectively. Yeah, 30% up. So again, this is a stacking mechanic I'm talking about. You may start off at a number and then you'll get closer to a higher number. Like I've gotten 800,000 defense, things of that nature. So yeah, quantified in that we do have the stacking defensive mechanic. Now, I always kind of harp on stacking defense as being the more important thing than stacking attack. Like if you have a unit that stacks only attack versus only defense, I think the only defensive unit, depending on how hard the content is going to be a lot more valuable to you. right? So let's go ahead and take a look at the stacking attack mechanic and some of the units that do have that if you would like to go ahead and just funnel some of these units in. But again, this list of characters, if they don't do both, is my point, you're going to have a little bit more difficulty as the event goes on because they're going to be hitting you a little bit harder. But most notably, there are some good units in here, like the Tech Trunks, LR Vegito Blue. If you get his 12 key super specifically, raises both of his stats, so do keep that as well. So overall, though, you have some good options in here. And then otherwise, there's some good units in here that are just good defensive units anyway that can make use of that. So let's talk about some other units, though. So there are also units that are going to be good in category-specific matchups. So the thing about this event is, for the stage 1, it's kind of hard to really say, okay. Although I will say that, like, when you get to a point, it probably doesn't matter too much because the last few rounds are Goku family. But like, there are units that are going to be good versus Goku family, Vegeta family, whatever, right? Specific category matchups, and you can do that. Like, let's just say LR Baby here, who's good versus Pure Saiyans and Hybrid Saiyans. Like, that's not always going to be available on the first part of this, but after stage 5, it pretty much is, right? So stuff like that, do be aware of. But you can really cheese that for the level 2 because level 2 is all androids all the time. And since that's the case, there are some units that are going to be really good versus the all android thing. So we have this World Tournament Gohan who raises attack on Super limitlessly. He gets attack and defense at the start of the turn, and plus an additional 50% attack and 2 ki when there's an android category enemy there. He also has some solid links overall. Personally, I think this is one of the lower tier options you can take, but he was worth mention, especially because he's an int type, and you'll notice that a lot of the units I'm going to list are int types anyway, but they're int type being good because there's a couple of tech bosses and only one physical boss. So if you have the ability to play around that, you're fine. For the record though, if you are struggling with the 8 and 9 levels of level 2 or stages of level 2, make sure that you do bring something that allows you to remove the locking, like a Senzu Bean or Senzu Essence. You're probably going to rather bring the Senzu Bean for the record, but still, you can do something like that and you're fine, and you go from there. So on top of that though, Gohan, like I said, stacks attack and then gets another attack boost. He's going to be, overall, he's going to be pretty solid, I'd say. Speaking of Gohan, I personally think, this is the funny thing, I personally think that this card is better non-transformed just because the stack mechanic that he has, and then post EZA, it raises defense and lowers attack. And we already talked about, no, I actually did not talk about how on level 2, there's no attack down icon, so you should be able to lower the attack of the enemies. So the Goku individually is going to be really good on level 2 specifically, but he's also going to obviously be good on level 1, but raising defense, all of that, start of the turn defense boost. He even gets access to his own support passive, which is a further 30%. But if you really, really, really wanted to, you can exchange into Gohan, and Gohan actually gets bonuses for being versus android enemies, or android / Cell Saga specifically. So Gohan on Super raises attack and defense, so that's really good for him, of course. Do keep that in mind as well. Supreme Damage lowers attack and defense as well, so he's doing a lot of things here. So on top of that, he gets a 90% at start of the turn boost. On top of that, an additional 50% defense and attack boost, and launches 2 additional attacks, and has a high chance of performing a critical hit when there's an android / Cell Saga category enemy. So the whole additional part of that is only versus that enemy, and the normal, like the additional attacks, the additional boost, all of that, the crit chance, but he's going to be pretty good versus that event. So the tactic for this guy is probably like wait until towards the end of the event if you actually are going to exchange. But depending on what you run, again, you're probably just better off not exchanging. Like if you have like Gohan cards, you're probably better off not exchanging and just keeping Goku, for the record. Other Gohan cards, right? Like AGL Gohan. So Krillin. Krillin is actually really good. So he raises defense limitlessly. For the record, he's also a Cell Saga leader if you need that. Raises defense limitlessly, can stun as well. Don't really need stunning because it's not even applicable. Attack and defense plus 80% at the start of the turn, plus an additional 7% attack and defense per Cell Saga category ally on the team. And then Ki +4 as a first attacker, Ki +2 as a second attacker, but also launches an additional super attack when there's an android category enemy. So for the whole event, Krillin will launch a minimum of 2 super attacks. And he'll even have an easier time supering if you leave him on rotation. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Why Krillin is actually really good for this event. And he stacks defense. You could get up to a maximum of 3 supers in a turn. He's going to be really good defensively really quick. Now, obviously, his offense is not going to be anything spectacular spectacular. But again, like I mentioned earlier, if you can sustain defensively, you'll be fine. So another unit that's going to be really good is another free option here. Another unit I would probably just not bother exchanging, at least until the very, very, very end. But Vegeta actually raises attack and defense on each super. So yeah, he's going to stack pretty nicely and be really good towards the end, to where he's going to be incredibly tanky and hitting pretty hard. Again, this is post-EZA. And then Trunks will be really good towards the end overall. But again, make sure you save Trunks until the end, because Trunks' debuffs that he gets actually do take effect on turns he's not there, like other turn-restricted units. So you don't want to do it too soon. So save him pretty much until the end if you do it, and you get one super powerful hit in and end it. But regardless, so Vegeta's like the prime type of unit. Raising attack and defense is like literally the best thing a unit can do for these harder types of events overall. Unless they get a more profound defensive boost or something like that, like Int Goku Black Rose, who gets a 50% defensive boost per super, base as well, not just Rose. But yeah, like those units that are good as well for this stage. So we have Super Vegeta here, who gets attack and defense boost, and then gets a further attack and defense boost, but a guaranteed crit, whether it's a normal or super, when there's an android enemy. So again, units like this that have versus android requirements are good. And for the last thing, Gohan, again, he's good as well because of the android requirement here. You don't need a android unit on your team if you are versus an android event, which is part 2 in its entirety. And you also don't need a 16 on your team, so you can transform reliably just because of the other event. So let's talk about some teams that'll be good there. I talked a lot about androids, and the reason why androids would be really good there, if you happen to be struggling in particular, is because androids is a category that has a ton of different defensive things. So they'll have options like their leader, who is a key and defensive support. Also, they'll have access to other units that just debuff the enemy, debuffing, healing, defensive support, just a lot of stuff like that. Some of the best tanks in the game, like the 16 cards here, like and the LR cell cards, and their healing, and then the defensive combination of all of that. The culmination of all those different mechanics makes androids an incredibly sustainable team. So if you have access to this team, you definitely would want to run them and go from there, right? Another team that'd be really good is Patara. The thing is, like, okay, let me just say this. There were like literally, I think pretty much every mid-tier to high-tier category should be able to do this event. Like, I don't think that you'll struggle. You might have to switch up your team a bit. Like, maybe you regularly bring this unit. Maybe you don't bring that unit and you bring a stacker instead in that spot, right? But I think the category overall can do it, and I don't think it particularly matters on whether or not you're a quote-unquote whale. I just think the units are good, right? So Patara, Fusion, movie heroes, like all of these categories are going to be really good. So I'm only highlighting a couple because I think these categories, again, have the intangibles you would need. So we have access on this category to the max heal, the high defensive capability, the counter hit of the LR leader. Otherwise, we have Kefla, who does do some of the intangibles as well, like being able to dodge and stuff. That'll be helpful in spots, right? LR Vegeta Blue, I talked about stacking attack and defense being incredible. But not only that, if you don't have him or if you don't want to run him, Tech Vegeta Blue, okay, so I have a disdain for this guy because he never gives me additional supers, but he still remains one of the best units you can take to these prolonged events because of the possibility for up to 4 super attacks in a turn, and all of them raising attack and defense. Not to mention he gets another attack raise in the passive. So yeah. yeah, he's gonna be good, right? So overall though, that's pretty much it for my team recommendations for the end there. So for the last thing, I wanted to just kind of show an example of if you're struggling to build out a team, a core team, right? And I wanted to at least have half of the team being quote-unquote free-to-play options. So we have these 3. We have the Cell Saga leader, Krillin, and we have the Goku and Vegeta cards post-EZA, who are going to be incredible, right, for their intangibles as far as like stacking attack or defense or lowering the enemy's attack, whatever. So how would you fill out the team from here if you have this core? Obviously, if you have Cell as your leader, you're better off, right? If you have Cell, obviously you'd run him as a leader, so I'm assuming that if Krillin's your lead, you don't have him. If you have Gohan, you can run Gohan on the team, but again, if you're running it this way, you probably don't have him. But to be fair, Cell Saga leader is an entirely different thing, so you probably could have the Gohan and run him on the team. I talked about units like this Vegeta who would fit incredibly well on an Android type of stage, so something like this works out as well. And then also for the rest of this category overall, the other units to consider are units like Future Gohan, the physical type, who while he doesn't get a boost like the Int type, is going to be an incredible tank on this event overall. And then other than that, if you have the SS2 Gohan post-EZA, you can do that. So let's just kind of fill in the rest of this. We're not going to have much support, but with the stacking core, you don't need it. So let's just fill in the last little couple pieces. So we'll go with these 5, and then the last spot being entirely flexible. If you have an LR character like LR Trunks, you could run him, whatever you would like to do, and then go from there. Or if you have, like, if you're on JP, you can run Cell here if you have this guy, because he stacks as well. Like, he's really good too. So there's just options like this you guys can do overall. So thank you all. Hope you guys enjoyed. Hit that subscribe if you were new, and I'll catch all of you in the next one.